Thank you, Senator Doris. If there's any person in the city of Boston, Senator Doris, of course, is revered. I'm talking about the city of Boston, who loves Ireland and has done more for Ireland than our next speaker, Frank Costello. He was press secretary for Ray Flynn. He's worked with Billy Bulger, and he's going to talk with us now after a little lead-in from, hopefully all of you can join in, with one verse of One Day at a Time. Frank Costello was to be our guest speaker at Our Lady of Good Voyage, but he was way down deep in the heart of Texas with a good friend of mine, Bishop Drury, because Frank is pursuing his studies for Irish studies for his PhD, and he was converting and conversing with Bishop Drury. But he will be with us this Easter Sunday. So April the 3rd, put it in your board, April 3rd, Easter Sunday, the Dooley brothers are going to be singing, and Frank Costello is going to be our speaker. Frank Costello just arrived back from Washington early this morning, and he is with us now to share some thoughts about why we are here on historic Boston Common on this St. Patrick's Day. It's a real privilege to welcome Frank Costello.
To preface my immediate comments by saying that on this common, as many of you do well know, of course, the Boston Massacre occurred. And at that time, among those who died that day, 200 some odd years ago, were Crispus Attucks, a black American, and 2 Irish natives. I said that was important because of particularly events that took place in Washington yesterday, with the support we got from many civil rights leaders. And Mel King, I notice, is here, and he's been with us for a long, long time, so let's not forget that. But there's a great poem by John Boyle O'Reilly commemorating that event of the Boston Massacre, a great Irish poet, a great Irish American, a fighter for rights of people in Ireland and for black Americans here. I'm going to quote at the outset briefly from Mayor Flynn's statement in case you haven't seen that, but I'll follow up with some remarks of my own. The mayor stated that yesterday's horror, in which a number of people were killed or seriously injured after a nationalist funeral procession was attacked in Belfast, underscores dramatically the plight of the nationalist community in Northern Ireland and the utter despair that British rule has perpetrated throughout the occupied 6 counties. He states further, the institutionalized violence demonstrated by the British government against Irish people has manifested itself in many forms. Its courts have continued to imprison 6 innocent men despite clear evidence of a prior conviction process that involved torture and questionable forensic practices. The justice denied these men diminished all of us, but in the end, it is most of all a plot on the name of Britain itself. On the matter of actual physical violence, clearly committed under official British auspices, we saw on January 25th the British government's refusal to come to terms with the murder of innocent unarmed nationalists by its police. We further saw the provision of official sanction of the cover-up committed by senior police and British intelligence officials, thwarting the effort to investigate those deaths. Furthermore, by the re-enlistment into the ranks of the British Army of the first soldier, so-called, convicted of killing an unarmed Catholic after serving only 3 years of a life sentence. In the same week, another unarmed Catholic was shot down without provocation by the British Army. We see that Britain's disregard for the conduct required of a civilized society continues, in the villages, in the cities, on the roadways of the north of Ireland. I have some observations of my own, speaking for myself. In the middle of the last century, Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist leader, stated his philosophy on reform, and in the process gave some advice of value to people in every age and every place who seek justice. He said in 1849, Frederick Douglass did, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. Power concedes nothing without a demand for it. It never did and it never will." End quote from Mr. Douglass. Yes, on behalf of Mayor Flynn, I was happy to join Congressman Kennedy at an historic moment in Washington, in front of the British Embassy, I might add. There we were joined by leaders of the American Civil Rights Movement and the struggle for economic justice for farm workers, including Martin Luther King III, Reverend Larry, who heads the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Cesar Chavez, who founded and heads United Farm Workers, and 2 distinguished members of the U.S. Congress active in the Black and Hispanic caucuses, Representative John Lewis of Georgia and Al Bustamante, our friend Jimani mentioned, from Texas. Those men stood with us, representing many minority people in this country on behalf of justice for Irish men and women in the north of Ireland. They spoke from their own experience and heartfelt struggle. And as Congressman Lewis so eloquently told the British ambassador who questioned their intervention on the Northern Ireland question, he said, quote, "We came out of slavery. We understand hate." Journeying back to the U.S. Capitol with these men afterwards, and after this truly historic occasion, I was taken particularly by something Dr. Joseph Lowery said of his encounter with the British ambassador. Quote, "He tried to imply we were outside agitators. I told him that was the same language we heard from the Southern races not too long ago." End quote. Quoting Dr. King when asked why he was protesting in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, Congressman Kennedy answered, "We are here because injustice is here." And that was in front of the British Embassy. Yesterday, these leaders of minorities in America, these still staunch battlers for civil rights and economic justice, stood up for the rights of Irish men and women to live in dignity. I was particularly proud when they told the British ambassador to his face that they will continue to speak out and join protests until Britain changes its way towards Ireland. Are we ready? I'm compelled to ask, based on their generosity of spirit and their belief that injustice anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere, to join fully with them as Irish Americans, born also of a people who have known the lash of oppression, to join them in the final decades of the 20th century in supporting the rights of Black Americans and Hispanic Americans and Asian Americans? Would it not be a terrible meanness of spirit to accept their support of us without us finally extending the hand of friendship, not by our words but also by our deeds? As we remember St. Patrick as a man of peace and love, let us remember that his was a message not just for those in Ireland. Let us, in remembering him, not demand for ourselves that which we do not also demand for others. For hand in hand with Irish liberty goes the cause of human liberty, whether in Belfast, Boston, South Africa, or anywhere else. Let us stand together as Ben Franklin urged the colonies, or we will all hang separately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank Costello.